All right, guys and ghouls, we are going to do lesson 1-9. And 1-9 talks about dividing rational numbers, okay? So we just divided integers, and those were the whole numbers that were positive and negative, and now we're talking about fractions and decimals. So if you look at the top, the same rules for signs apply. So that means if they have the same sign, it's positive. If they have different signs, it's negative. Okay, next thing to note is that we don't divide fractions, we multiply by the inverse, or we keep, change, flip. Now remember back when we were adding and subtracting integers, we didn't subtract integers, we added the opposite. Well, this is kind of the same thing. And then to divide decimals, we must first make them whole numbers and then long divide. So if we start out with a pretty general question, we would have something like 1 and 1/5, let's get rid of that x, divided by 10. Okay, so this can also be written as 1 and 1/5 divided by 10. We read multiplication from top to bottom, so top divided by bottom, or from, just like we read, left to right. Okay, so if we go into solving this, if we look back up at the rules at the top, it says we don't divide fractions, we multiply by the inverse. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we have to figure out what our fractions are. And just like with multiplying, we can't just use the whole numbers. They have to be improper fractions. So 1 1/5 can be written as 6/5 divided by, and 10, we have 10 as a whole number, but I know that any whole number is itself over 1. All right, now we have our two fractions, so now we need to figure out the inverse. We need to flip the second one. Keep, change, flip. Okay, to flip, we basically just flip it on its end. The numerator becomes the denominator becomes the numerator. So we have keep 6/5, change division to multiplication, and we're multiplying by the inverse, which is 1/10. All right, 6 times 1 is 6, 5 times 10 is 50. That can be reduced into 3/25. All right, if one of them was negative, it would be a negative 3/25, etc. Now let's look at one where we are dividing decimals. All right, to divide decimals, we're going to set them up in long division, just like we have been. So if we had 6.24 divided by 2.6, or 6.24 divided by 2.6, same thing, we would put still the denominator on the outside, so 2.6 and 6.24 on the inside. Okay, if you look back up, it says we must first make them whole numbers. Well, we really only have to make the denominator a whole number. And in order to do that, we need to multiply it by 10, by 100, by 1,000, enough to get that decimal place at the end of both numbers. So we want to get this decimal over here. We just moved it one decimal place, which means we multiplied it by 10. So then we have to multiply this by 10 to move that decimal as well. So everything we do to the outside, we have to do to the inside. So here's our new decimal. It'll be right here. And then you can add some zeros back there, just like we had been. Now we ask how many 26s in 62. Okay, well, 2 26s is 52, so it goes into it twice, and it's 52. 62 minus 52 is 10. Bring down that 4. How many 26s in 104? Well, we just said that 2 were 52, and 52 times 2 is 104, so I'm going to assume that there will be 4. Okay, so 6.24 divided by 2.6 is 2.4. If one of them was negative, our answer would be negative. If they're both negative, it would be positive, etc. So what happens when we get one that is mixed? It has both. So we have, I'm trying to think of a problem here. Let's do 45.50 divided by, and our fractions were blue, 6.5. Okay, so just like with multiplying, choose which way you are most comfortable with. I think most people are going to be most comfortable with fractions in this case, so I'm going to do fractions. So 45.5 is the same as 45.5 divided by 6.5. All right, we got those gross whole numbers in there, so that's not going to work with me. We need to make them into improper fractions. An equivalent fraction to the one that's there, but without those whole numbers, is going to be 91 over 2. And 2 times 6 is 12, 13 over 2. And we're still dividing. We haven't flipped yet. Okay, so here's our new problem. 91 over 2 divided by 13 over 2. And we don't divide fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So we need to turn that second fraction upside down. We need to flip the 13 and the 2. Boop, 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 boop. So we now have 2 over 13, and we change this to multiplying. All right, this doesn't exist anymore now. So now we have 91 over 2 times 2 over 13. Hopefully you've noticed that these 2's have a common factor of 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1 and 1. 91, 9, 10, I don't know if it's divisible by 13, so I'm just going to not and see what happens later. So 91 times 1 is 91, and 13 times 1 is 13. Now we need to make it back into a number with whole numbers. And 91, if we do 13 times 10, that's 130. 13 times 9, no, that's going to be way too big. 13 times 8. 8 and 3 is 24. And 8 times 1 is 8, plus 2 is 10, 104, so that's too much. 13 times 7, 21. 7 times 1 is 7, 8, and 9. So there we have 91. All right, so perfect. 91 is divisible by 13, and it is 7. Again, if one of them was negative, the answer would be negative. If they were both negative, it would still be positive. So dividing rational numbers, what you need to remember are the rules up here. We don't divide fractions, we multiply by the inverse, or we keep, change, flip. So that's important up there. And also decimals, we must first make them. I'm going to cross out them and put the denominator. Hey, I said it right that time, guys. You should be proud of me. Make the denominator a whole number, and then whatever you do to the denominator, make sure you do it to the numerator on the inside of the house. So hopefully this is sufficient enough for you to do the workbook pages and ace the quiz. I'll see you when I see you.